A ton of players who break out in year one never reach that level again. Coaches study the film and coordinators scheme specifically for them. That's a sophomore slump, and it swallows up more promising careers than injuries ever will. But a small group of players didn't just survive year two. They were elite and made it clear that their rookie season was just the opening act. We're going position by position, going through NFL history of some of the best year twos of all time, ending with a player who may have had the best sophomore season ever. We might as well start with quarterbacks because nobody feels the pressure in year two like this group. Tom Brady's rookie year in 2000 was barely a footnote, consisting of one start and minimal reps while he worked as a backup learning on the sideline. But when Drew Bledsoe went down in week 2 of 2001, Brady took over, and what followed was one of the most unlikely championship runs in NFL history. He threw for 2,843 yards and 18 touchdowns while going 11-4 as a starter, eventually winning the Super Bowl over the greatest show on turf, Rams. Nobody called him a franchise quarterback to start, but by February, there was no debate left. Peyton Manning had the opposite problem. His rookie year in 1998 wasn't forgettable, it was historically ugly. He finished with 26 interceptions, which was the most ever by a rookie at the time. The media was already writing the potential bust narrative, but in year two, Manning threw for 4,135 yards and 26 touchdowns while leading Indianapolis to the playoffs, and he showed exactly why the Colts took him first overall, finishing second in MVP voting to Kurt Warner. That leap from 26 picks to playoff quarterback in one offseason is one of the most dramatic single-season turnarounds at the position ever. Now, Patrick Mahomes in 2018 is in its own category. His actual rookie year was one start, so when 2018 arrived, it was technically his second season, but his first real one, and he treated it like he had a point to prove. 50 touchdowns and 5,097 yards. NFL MVP at 23, the youngest since Dan Marino in 1984. Defenses ran the right coverages and Mahomes beat them anyway, with throws from angles that shouldn't physically be possible. The no-look passes became cultural moments, and that season didn't just announce Mahomes, it redefined what the quarterback position could look like. Lamar Jackson's story runs parallel. His actual rookie year in 2018, he took over mid-season, looked electric, and showed flashes of something special. But year two in 2019 was unanimous. All 50 MVP voters. He threw for 36 touchdowns leading the NFL, rushed for 1,206 yards leading the NFL in rushing for a QB, breaking Michael Vick's single-season QB record in the process, all while leading the Ravens to a 14-2 record in the number 1 seed. The only other unanimous MVP in league history before him was Tom Brady in 2010, and Lamar did it at 22 years old. Joe Burrow's path to year two was a bounce-back year. His actual rookie season in 2020 ended after 10 games when his knee gave out. So when he came back in 2021 fully healthy, nobody really knew what to expect. He answered by throwing for 4,611 yards and 34 touchdowns, posting a 108.3 passer rating, and taking a Cincinnati Bengals franchise that hadn't been relevant in decades all the way to the Super Bowl. The city hadn't seen anything close to that in a long time, and Burrow delivered it in his first full healthy season. Drake May in 2025 might be the fastest franchise turnaround in recent memory. His rookie year with New England in 2024 was rough, featuring a 4-13 team, a thin roster, and a quarterback learning on the fly in a brutal situation. Year two looked nothing like that. Under a new head coach and some offseason weapons, May led the Patriots to a 14-3 record and a Super Bowl appearance, all while putting up MVP caliber numbers all season and finished second in MVP voting. His 72% completion percentage broke the single-season franchise record previously held by Tom Brady. And then there's Caleb Williams also in 2025 to round out this group. Year one in Chicago was the story of a coach on the hot seat and a shaky offensive line at best. And Caleb ended the season sacked 68 times. Year two under new coach Ben Johnson changed everything. Caleb threw for 3,942 yards, 27 touchdowns, won the NFC North, and earned the nickname Iceman for the way he closed out games in the fourth quarter. The Bears ended the year with 7 fourth-quarter comebacks, including one of those in the playoffs against the Packers. The Bears hadn't won a division title since 2018 and hadn't had a quarterback this good in a long time, possibly ever. 7 quarterbacks was 7 different roads to the same result, a second season so good it erased every doubt their first year had created. But QBs get all the headlines by default. The players catching those passes? They had some legendary year 2 seasons of their own. Wide receivers usually live and die by the highlight reel, and year 2 is where the league finds out if those flashes were real or just a lucky sample size. For this group, the highlights were just a piece of their story. Jerry Rice showed plenty of potential during his rookie season in 1985, finishing with 49 catches for 927 yards and 3 touchdowns, which was enough to show he belonged, but not enough to crown him the best in the game yet. Year 2 erased every single bit of uncertainty about his status though. During that 1986 campaign, Jerry exploded for 1,570 yards and 15 touchdowns, earning his first Pro Bowl nod and winning Offensive Player of the Year. He managed to catch a touchdown in 13 straight games that season, setting a massive record that stood for decades. What makes that jump so impressive is the context, because every defense in the league knew exactly who he was and had a full offseason to study his film. It simply didn't matter because he ran past everyone anyway. And that second season laid the foundation for a career that ended with 22,895 yards and 3 Super Bowl rings. Randy Moss put together one of the most electric rookie years in the history of the NFL back in 1998. He caught 17 touchdowns as a first-year player, and the rest of the league was genuinely stunned by his dominance. Naturally, year 2 arrived with a massive question about whether he could actually sustain that pace, since some guys catch lightning in a bottle and never do it again. Moss answered those doubts in 1999 by racking up 1,413 yards and 11 TDs, even adding a punt return score to his resume. His yardage total was actually higher than his rookie season, and while the touchdowns dipped slightly, it was only because opposing coordinators were building entire game plans to just slow him down. He still found the end zone 11 times because he was just built differently than everyone else on the field, and that second year confirmed his greatness wasn't going away. Later, Fitzgerald entered the league as a 3rd overall pick in 2004, and while his rookie year was solid with 780 yards and 8 touchdowns, it only proved that he was a starter rather than a superstar. Everything changed during his second season in 05 though. He put up 1,409 yards and 10 touchdowns to earn his first Pro Bowl selection, and he did it while playing for a Cardinals team that wasn't even close to competing for a title. That context is important because Fitzgerald was producing those elite numbers without a great quarterback or a strong supporting cast to take the pressure off. He was just that talented in a bad situation, and he made the most of every single target that came his way regardless of the score. Odell Beckham Jr. will always have his rookie year tied to that one-handed catch against the Cowboys, a play that every casual fan can still picture perfectly. But his full 2014 season was great for plenty of other reasons, as he finished with 1,305 yards and 12 touchdowns to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. The big question heading into 2015 was whether that production was a fluke, or if the famous catch was just a preview of a much larger reality. Year 2 settled the debate immediately when Beckham went for 1,450 yards and 13 touchdowns, making the Pro Bowl again and proving the hype was completely justified. At just 23 years old, he was already one of the most dangerous weapons in football, and it looked like he hadn't even scratched the surface of his potential yet, getting on the cover of Madden 16 in the process. Justin Jefferson faced an almost unfair level of expectation heading into his second year. His 2020 rookie campaign was one of the best ever for a receiver. He put up 1,400 yards and broke Randy Moss's franchise record in Minnesota. So the pressure in 2021 was about more than just avoiding a slump. But Justin responded by racking up 1,616 yards and 10 touchdowns, earning a first-team All-Pro selection and proving that his rookie year was actually his floor rather than his ceiling. He was only 22 years old at the time, yet he played like a seasoned veteran who had already seen every single coverage the NFL could throw at him. The Vikings realized they had a receiver who simply couldn't be stopped, and year 2 was when the rest of the league finally accepted that reality. These 5 players took different paths to reach the same conclusion, proving that extra film didn't slow them down, and the increase in tension didn't rattle their confidence. Now we need to pivot to the position that takes the most physical punishment on the field. Those are the running backs who made year 2 look like a video game. Running backs never get the luxury of easing into a new season at all. Every single carry is a high-speed collision where every yard is contested, and the physical toll from year 1 follows you directly into year 2, whether you want it to or not. The backs on this list didn't just survive that brutal grind, they actually came back even stronger. Earl Campbell took home the Offensive Rookie of the Year award in 1978 after rushing for 1,450 yards, and looking like the most powerful runner the league had seen in a generation. That turned out to be just the warm-up for his legendary 1979 season. In year 2, he piled up 1,697 yards and 19 touchdowns on his way to winning NFL MVP. To put those numbers into perspective, 19 rushing touchdowns is considered an elite stat in today's 17-game era. But Campbell did it in 16 games while absorbing hits from linebackers who were actively trying to end his career. Defenders didn't just have a hard time tackling him, they genuinely feared making contact with him in the open field. The Oilers built their entire identity around his power, and by his second year, he was clearly the best player in football at any position. Eric Dickerson had a unique situation because his rookie year wasn't just good, it was arguably the greatest debut a running back has ever had. He finished 1983 with 1,808 yards and an Offensive Rookie of the Year trophy, sending a clear signal that something special was happening with the Rams in Los Angeles. Heading into year 2, nobody was wondering if he could repeat the performance. They were wondering if there was any limit to what he could achieve. It turns out there wasn't a ceiling at all, because in 1984 he ran for 2,105 yards and broke a single season record that had stood since 1973. That record still stands today, and only one person has ever come close to touching it in over 40 years of play, who we'll get to a little bit later. Every time a modern running back has a massive season, people start doing the math to see if they can chase that 2,105 mark. But Dickerson set the bar at an unreachable height in just his second year. Barry Sanders arrived in Detroit in 1989 and immediately won Offensive Rookie of the Year by rushing for 1,470 yards. The Lions finally had a back who could make defenders miss in tiny spaces that shouldn't even exist, and that first year proved his college highlights weren't just a product of a weaker competition. During his second season in 1990, he finished with 1,304 yards and 16 touchdowns, earning another Pro Bowl nod and giving the Lions a true franchise cornerstone for the first time in years. While his total yardage was slightly lower than his rookie mark, his touchdown production exploded as his elusiveness reached a level that felt impossible to defend. Detroit had found a player who was going to dominate highlight reels for the next decade, and year 2 was the first real look at what sustained greatness would look like for Detroit. Adrian Peterson made sure the world knew his name during his 2007 rookie season, especially after he set the NFL all-time record with 296 rushing yards against the Chargers. Because of that start, the expectations for his second year were genuinely massive, but he delivered on every bit of the hype. In 2008, Peterson rushed for 1,760 yards and 10 touchdowns, earning a Pro Bowl selection and a spot on the first-team All-Pro list. The Vikings had a true workhorse who could carry the entire offense on his back, and Peterson proved that his record-breaking rookie game wasn't just a fluke or a lucky break with the blocking. He was consistently dominant between the tackles week after week, and his second season removed any doubt about his status as an elite runner. He was also the only one who's come close to breaking Eric Dickerson's record just a few seasons later after a torn ACL. Jahmyr Gibbs is the most recent addition to this list and the final one we'll get to in this crew. And his jump from year 1 to year 2 in Detroit is a perfect example of a player thriving in a larger role. During his 2023 rookie season, he worked in rotation with David Montgomery and posted 945 yards and 10 TDs, which was impressive for a part-time starter in a shared backfield. But when 2024 rolled around, he took over as the primary ball carrier and quickly became one of the most explosive players in the entire league. He finished with 1,412 yards and 16 touchdowns, ranking in the top 5 for rushing as the Lions built their entire ground game around his skill set. The elite speed that made him a first-round pick finally had a full-time stage to shine on, and he didn't waste a single opportunity. Running backs have to take a beating every single week just to survive, but the defenders on this next list were the ones handing out the punishment. Defense rarely gets the spotlight that offensive players do, but the players on this list didn't need any highlight reels to show what they could actually do. These guys made quarterbacks nervous before the ball was even snapped, and they forced offensive coordinators to tear up their game plans and start over. Every single one of them made their second season even more terrifying than the first. Lawrence Taylor put together a rookie year in 1981 that was already historic, winning both Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. That never happens, so everyone was wondering what he could possibly do for an encore. His second year in 1982 was a strike-shortened season where only 9 games were played. Yet LT still posted 7.5 sacks and won his second straight Defensive Player of the Year award. He even picked off a pass and returned it for a touchdown during that stretch. And just think about those 9 games for a second. He was producing at a rate that would have been untouchable over a full 16-game season. And he did it while every offensive line in the NFC was scheming specifically to stop him. They failed. The standard LT set in those first 2 years was not just about his personal stats, but about how he changed the entire definition of the linebacker position. Before LT arrived, linebackers were there to just stop the run and cover backs, but after LT, they became game-changing pass rushers who won MVP awards. He eventually won the league MVP in 1986, but that conversation really started back in year 2. Luke Kuechly entered the league in 2012 and immediately led the NFL in tackles on his way to winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. It was a clean and dominant start that showed exactly why the Panthers used a first-round pick on him. However, rookies can sometimes fly under the radar because coordinators are still probing them for weaknesses, so the second year is when the real evaluation happens. During that 2013 season, Kuechly won Defensive Player of the Year, and the defining moment came in Week 16 against the Saints. He recorded 24 tackles in a single game, including an interception to Drew Brees that sealed the win for Carolina. Recording 24 tackles in one game is almost unheard of. The Panthers finished that year with a 12-4 record, and Luke functioned as the engine running the entire unit. He was much more than a tackle machine, acting like a quarterback on the defensive side of the ball who diagnosed plays before the snap. By the time his second season ended, he was the best linebacker in football without any debate. Myles Garrett had a dominant path to his sophomore season that actually started with a lot of frustration. His rookie year in 2017 was cut short by injuries, and while 7 sacks in 11 games is a strong start, it wasn't a big enough sample size to show what a number 1 overall pick could truly become. In 2018, he finally played a full season and posted 13.5 sacks, which showed the Cleveland Browns exactly why they spent that top pick on him. His pass rush ability was never really in question because his combination of length and speed off the edge was elite from day one. Year 2 was simply the first time the league got to see those skills over a full schedule, and the performance confirmed that the Browns finally had their franchise defender. Micah Parsons came into the league in 2021 as a linebacker and won Defensive Rookie of the Year while becoming a finalist for the DPOY award. When he returned for his second season in 2022, he looked less like a traditional player and more like a defensive force of nature. He racked up 13.5 sacks and earned a first-team All-Pro nod, creating the kind of film that coaches use to show young players what real disruption looks like. It didn't matter where the Cowboys put him, whether he lined up as linebacker or an edge rusher, because he always found a way to get to the QB and make a big play. The Cowboys had plenty internal debates about their roster and priorities, but Parsons settled the argument about the defense very quickly, until Jerry went crazy. We have one position left to cover, and this next player might have the most statistically dominant second season on this entire list. Rob Gronkowski gave everyone a legitimate preview during his rookie year in 2010 by putting up over 500 yards and 10 touchdowns. He showed a clear chemistry with Tom Brady and played like a tight end who could block like a lineman but run routes like a wide receiver. The potential was obvious to anyone watching, but what happened in year 2 was something nobody could have predicted. It was a performance that the league had never seen from that position before. In 2011, Gronk caught 90 passes for 1,327 yards and 17 touchdowns, which set a single-season record for tight ends that still stands today. Defensive coordinators had no real answer for him because he was too big for safeties to hit and too fast for linebackers to cover down the field. He then put up 145 yards and 3 touchdowns in their first playoff game against the Broncos, and then 87 yards against Baltimore on their way to the Super Bowl. The Patriots built their entire 2011 offense around his specific skill set, and the result was the most dominant tight end season in NFL history. That touchdown record had survived for over a decade despite plenty of elite players trying to chase it, and so far, nobody's broken it. Every player on this list had something to prove in their second year, and they all stepped up when it mattered the most. So there you have it. Watch this next video if you haven't already, and subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.